All right.
Right. Yes. So that actually seems to be working. Good. Yes. Hello. And with me today, I have got the incredible Donna A Latham. I'm right with the middle initial there, aren't I, Donna?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Excellent stuff. Donna, first things first, which genre do you write in and how do you define that genre?
Honestly, right now, I don't think I have a specific genre that I write in. Finding Heaven is kind of dark erotica. The piece that I wrote with Todd Love, A Mother's Love, which is a Godless exclusive, it's kind of splatterpunk extreme.
Right.
And then my poetry book that I have coming out, that is dark erotic BDSM-y type poetry. So I think I'm still finding my niche in the genre. I do have some projects coming up that are in the horror genre. So I think I lean more towards the horror.
Right.
But I've been told that I should be writing, dark erotica books or romance books, which I don't know if I'm, I like to keep on the darker side of things. So.
I don't blame you. And I want to pop back to those subjects in just a moment. But first of all, what's your writing schedule?
My writing schedule is whenever I get a chance. I work full time for a health center. I have an 8-year-old son who is autistic, so he takes a little extra care. So as soon as I can, usually it's, after he goes to bed and I'm by myself and I can just bang out some work. Don't tell my boss, but sometimes when I have some downtime at work, I'll pull up my works in progress and, bang out some words. But I don't really have a typical schedule. I do need like peace and quiet because I work from home. And so during the day when my son's at school, it's very quiet in the house. I don't have the TV on. I don't have a radio on. I need peace and quiet to work and just focus on what I'm doing.
I completely get that. And I used to do the same thing. I used to work for this horrible employer. And they would put me on a computer, and usually for the mind-numbing stuff that they wanted me to do, I'd finished within about the first half an hour of the day, and I could spend the rest of the time flipping to a different screen, working on a short story, and then if one of the grown-ups came past me, I would flip back to the accounts screen. So yeah, I used to really enjoy doing that because it was like if you sold a piece of fiction after doing that, it was like I'm getting paid twice. I'm getting paid once by the person who's paid me to.
Yeah.
Obviously not the most professional attitude to have, but yeah. What's more important to you then? Is it plot or character?
I think character is more important. If you don't have a well-developed character or characters, cast, I should say, the plot doesn't matter. I've read some books where, the characters were kind of flat, but the story was really, the plot itself was interesting, but I just found myself not into it because the characters were just so one-dimensional. I felt nothing for the characters at all. So I think character development is way more important than plot. Yes, plot is important because if you don't have a good plot, you don't have a story for those good characters. But if your characters are crap, then your plot is just not gonna go anywhere.
Is that the same for reading and for writing? Are you the same both ways? Do you
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the last time I read something where it was very plot focused, and I got to admit, I do like characters that I can fall in love with, characters that I sort of like understand and know, and yeah, get to appreciate. I absolutely love those. So, what piece of writing advice would you give to anybody who's just starting out?
Just write. If you have an idea, put it on paper. It can always be fine-tuned and cleaned up after you're done. Don't be afraid to put your words on paper. I started writing basically on a whim. I had no thoughts about writing anything. It just one day I just started writing, basically Finding Heaven. I wrote that years ago and it just came out. It was actually inspired by a picture by the guy who does my covers. And this picture that he had posted on a website that we were on, it just inspired me to write that story. And then it just took off from there. So just don't be afraid. You know, if people don't like it, there's always going to be somebody who doesn't like what you write. You know, don't be afraid of that, because there's going to be people who like what you write. So write for yourself, write what you want to write when you want to write it. And, you know, maybe it doesn't go anywhere but that notebook you scribble it in, or your Word on your computer. Just get it out there and see what happens.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with that. And I think the key part of that is the write for yourself, write what you want to read, rather than chasing after a genre that's out there, rather than people saying, oh, this is hot at the moment, I'm going to write one of those. By the time we've finished writing that, it's no longer a hot genre, is it?
Exactly. Yeah.
So who do you read for pleasure?
I actually read mostly indie authors. Haley's come to visit. Yeah, I read a lot of indie authors. Mostly it's authors in the Books of Horror group on Facebook. You know, they're great people. And I've been in the Books of Horror group for probably about 2 years now. And I used to be one of those people who would only read books you can find at like Barnes & Noble, Stephen King, Dean Koontz, you know, those types of authors. And then I found indie authors and I was like, holy crap, there's like all this amazing talent out there. And every single one of them that I've interacted with are just fantastic people, including yourself, you know. And I honestly have read in the 2 years, maybe 2 books that I really didn't like.
Right.
Because I'm pretty open on what I read. I do read some romance books, and I do read some Stephanie Plum. But right now I'm focusing mostly on indie authors in the horror genre. Carver Pike, yourself, Eric Butler, Candace Nola, all those people in the Books of Horror group. I will go choose an indie author over a Stephen King. You know, I used to read a lot of James Rollins. I discovered his books in a used bookstore. And I really like his stories and his books, but now I'm like, wait a minute, there's all these people over here that I'd rather support. You know, James Rollins got millions and millions and millions of readers, you know, and he's a New York Times bestseller. So I'm going to focus on the people that, you know, are hidden voices in horror.
That must mean that you're discovering an awful lot of people who are outside the box. Do you find that indie authors are actually producing things that don't follow the mainstream narrative structure then?
Yeah, I mean, like, I hate to keep saying my written and read friends, but Aaron Beauregard, his books are, I'm sure you've heard of The Slob and all those, you know, Wedding Day Massacre and stuff, but his books are completely outside of the norm, or outside of the box. Elizabeth Bedlam, she's fantastic, and her books are completely insane, but I love them. I don't know if you've read any of her work, but
I haven't, but I'm going to have to now. Yeah,
start with Hoghead. But yeah, so there's a lot. I like reading outside of the box, you know, outside of the norm, not your typical ghost story. I enjoy those too, but I like something a little bit different, something that's going to make me go, oh my gosh, what did I just read?
I think that's one of the things that I've always found so exhilarating about an independent author, the fact that you don't know what you're going to get. If I pick up a book, and this is not me trying to trash Mills and Boon, but if I pick up a Mills and Boon romance, I know exactly what I'm going to get. I know where the romance is going to start, who the main players are going to be. If I pick up something from an unknown indie author, I don't know what's going to happen. It might disappoint me. It might leave me with nightmares. It might scar me forever. I don't, and yeah, I think it's that leap into the unknown that I like so much about that.
Yeah, and I tend to not read book synopsis.
Right.
If the cover looks good to me, if, you know, if it was recommended by somebody, if, you know, I'll hear a few words about basically what it's about, like your book that I read recently. You know, I knew kind of what it was about, but wasn't really 100% because I didn't really read the synopsis until after I had started the book.
I didn't know what it was about, actually.
Does anybody know what the book's about when they start writing it?
Yeah. I mean, when I'm trying to sort of like tell people what it's about, I just sort of like think, well, right at the end, and yeah, right. So yeah, who do you? Oh yes, I was making notes whilst you were talking there. The Stephanie plums, I've actually got those somewhere on one of my shelves. Are they worth dipping into? Because I don't think I have done yet.
They're hilarious. If you want a light, fast read, just to kind of get your mind off of things and enjoy, you know, be amused, Stephanie Plum books are the way to go. They are hilarious. And there's like, I don't know, there's like 30 of them. They're in number order. So you start with one for the money, and then it's like two for the show. And then I'm on like 14 now. So yeah, they're hilarious. It's just this woman has like bad luck, and it's just the things that happen to her. You're like, how could this person even be surviving life right now?
Right. Yeah. As soon as I finish, what am I reading at the moment? Don't know, but yeah, they will get loaded onto my phone very, very soon. So, readers of Finding Heaven have described the story as erotic horror. Do you think there's a definite relationship between horror and erotica?
I absolutely do. When you're reading horror, when you want a horror book, you want something that's going to elicit a response. Fight or flight, you know, throw the book across the room because it freaked you out. Just, you know, look at it and go, WTF did I just read? How can this person be sane? And, you know, write these types of things. And I think erotica is the same. It's to elicit a response from you, obviously different than horror. And horror and erotica are both, I don't want to say taboo, but we're not as enlightened in 2022 as we would like to think we are. You know, sex is still something that you don't talk about in polite company. You don't go to dinner with grandma and be like, hey, you know, I was watching this porn and, you know, it was really interesting. It was about a plumber, blah, 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 you know, and same like with horror, you wouldn't sit down with your grandma and say, oh gosh, I was reading this book and you know, the guy like ripped out the person's tongue and shoved it up their bum and then, you know, eviscerated them and wrapped their intestines around their body. And so, you know, like I said, it's 2022, but there's still things that we don't like to talk about, you know, and that's one of the reasons I do like indie authors, because they take those subjects like human trafficking, the sex worker industry, and put it into a good story. While yes, it's a story about, you know, a demon, we'll say, that's killing sex workers, but it's also possibly a story about the struggles of sex workers. You know, we have to acknowledge that sex workers do exist. They're not people we can just shove under the carpet and pretend that they're not there. They're there. They have the same struggles as a person working at a bank, you know, paying the bills, feeding their kids, clothing themselves, you know. So I think erotica and horror go good together because they're basically still taboos. And I think that's why more mainstream horror like Darcy Coates and Stephen King and Dean Koontz are still popular, because their stories are not cozy horror, but they're just a story about horror. Like when you read, you know, The Stand, yeah, it's about the collapse of society and, you know, a monster, but it's not addressing like real social issues, I don't think.
I get exactly what you're saying. And one of the other things about the relationship, I think, between erotica and horror, as you say, there's the taboo. So you've automatically got people negating what you're producing. So people sort of like saying, oh, yeah, when I've written erotica in the past, I worked alongside somebody who said, "Oh, I've got no interest in that sort of filth." And
Yeah.
it's just you've not actually read it yet. You don't know what sort of filth it is, because it's actually quite high quality filth that I was producing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the same with horror. You know, oh, I've got no time for that, because people have got these perceived preconceptions of what it is that they're going to be getting from either horror or erotica. And
Yeah.
yeah, I do think you're right that we don't get that with any other genre. Even though some of the other genres are far more predictable. Romance stories, and this is not me dismissing romance stories, I love a good romance story, but they are fairly predictable. You know,
Yep.
that usually you're going to end up with a happy ever after or happy for now. Mystery stories, you know that page one somebody's died, page the end somebody's solved the crime.
Yep.
So I'll stop ranting now. It sounds like I'm having a go, doesn't it?
No, I agree. It's you know, those genres, you know what you're getting. You know, a romance is going to end one way, you know, a mystery is going to end another way. You know, and so it's, you know, those action books or thrillers, you know, they're gonna, you know, the military thrillers, I call them, like the
Yeah.
James Rollins and with his Sigma Force series, and um I don't know really any other authors that write that type of book, because he's really the only one I read in that genre. Um, but yeah, it's you know what you're going to get with horror, especially with an independent author. You don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, that's part of the fun surprise, really, and I just think that adds such a meta level to the whole reading experience.
Yeah, it's like, and a great example of that is Jonathan Butcher's Chocolate Man.
Yeah, I was talking to Jonathan a couple of weeks ago. Yes.
Yeah, he's great. But his story, it on the face, it's about a poo demon, right?
Right.
And but when I was reading it, that's not what all I got from it. I got that it was a story about past traumas still affecting you in your adult, you know, childhood traumas affecting you as an adult, how those traumas affect the people around you, because it
Yeah.
doesn't just affect the person who had the trauma, it affects their, you know, friends, their spouse, their children, and family secrets. If you keep a deep dark secret in a family, eventually things are going to come out and it's going to, you know, cause an issue. So it was a really good story, and I really wish people would give it more of a chance, because they see the cover and they're like, oh no, I'm good.
Yeah, that's the maddening thing, really, isn't it? Because they're missing out on such a damn good story that's layered on so many different levels. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and so well written too. So aside from writing horror, you also write poetry. Do you find that practicing poetry sharpens your skills for writing prose?
I wouldn't say it sharpens my skills. I like poetry because it can really be in any format that you want. Um, you know, really don't have to, if you don't want to, you don't have to follow rules unless you're writing a specific type of poetry. Like if you're writing an acrostic poem,
Right.
you know, you do have to follow the rules, and of course, like a haiku and things like that. Um, I think poetry for me is more of a, just trying to find the right words. It lets me be more free.
Right.
I don't have to stick to the rules of there needs to be a comma and you need to, you know, not do a run-on sentence, and you not, you know, you have to, you know, put your paragraphs in, and you don't want to have like just like this ginormous, you know, 500 character paragraph and to be the whole thing. Poetry just lets you flow. The words can come as you want, and you can kind of format it. I have a couple of poems that, you know, I spaced the lettering to kind of make the reader read it the way I heard it in my mind.
Right.
So you can kind of just do whatever you want with poetry, as far as I know. I mean, yeah, okay, I'm sure there's specific rules for poetry, and you know, if you were an actual poet and, you know, put out poetry books all the time, you follow. But for me, it's just about the words flow in my mind, and I just write them as they flow, and I don't have to worry about all those grammar rules if I don't want to.
The way it should be as well, yeah. And I like the fact that you're bringing in sort of like graphological parts to poetry, so that you're pacing it out. It's almost as though you're giving your reader instructions of how they should interpret that piece.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, bullying readers. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Yes. So yeah, coming back to what you were saying before, so I've seen you talking with the Mothers of Mayhem, and I wanted to ask, how important do you think the sense of community is to independent horror authors? And do you feel this sense of community is stronger for this genre than for other areas of writing?
I think sense of community is super important. I was at AuthorCon and I just saw all of the authors, even those that they were there with their very first book, and they only had one book out, they were embraced and they were encouraged to keep going, keep writing. Yeah, you may not ever be living in a McMansion or anything like that, but just keep writing. And there's not a single person that I've come across that isn't uplifting to other people. And you have to have people in your corner. You have to have people behind you, either telling you, that was really good, or what, that's crap. You need to maybe refine it a little bit. You got to have people who are going to be honest with you. I think the community is super important. I suffer from huge social anxiety. I do not like to be around people. My friend circle is my two friends that were here. I keep a very, very, very small circle of people around me. But at AuthorCon, it was like I was with family that I didn't know I had.
It's just making me so jealous that that it's on the other side of the bloody world from here.
Oh, I know. I'd love for you to be able to come next year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, also, it was a ridiculous time for me anyway, because I've sort of got teaching commitments. So yeah. Yeah, I am so jealous. Do you think it's stronger within the horror community, or do you think that support is there throughout all communities of writers?
I don't really have experience with other genre communities, but I think it has to be stronger in the horror community, only because of the extreme, the splatterpunk authors. They don't get a lot of support from the reading community, so supporting each other and having a stronger, I think it's stronger because everybody knows how it feels. Everybody at one point possibly was like, I'm not going to tell this coworker that I write this type of stuff. I'm not going to tell this cousin, or I'm not going to tell this friend, or I'm not going to tell my kid's teacher that I write this type of stuff. You got to kind of keep it secret. And when you're with the community, you can just let everything, just be yourself and discuss those. So let's talk about serial killers and how they, would poison somebody. You couldn't go to the PTA meetings and discuss that with the other moms or dads.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I've been thrown out of too many staff meetings recently for my contributions about serial killers. So yeah, final question: what are you currently working on, and where can we find more of your work?
I'm currently working on a super secret project. It's a collaboration that I think is going to hopefully be really good. So that's going to probably take a couple months to get it written, and then we'll have to, of course, go to edits. I have another project that I'm working on to expand. I don't know if you know, but I had a really short story in the D&T newsletter last year. You Should Have Let Me In.
Yes.
And I got a lot of feedback that people wanted to know more about the demon Tamel. So I'm working on writing a book called Demon Diary. And it's basically Tamel talking about some of his victims in diary form. And there's more to it in his, introduction. But that's my solo project that I'm working on right now. And we got more. Todd Love and I are planning to do more Godless exclusives for A Mother's Love. We're going to do like a series. So it's going to be A Mother's Love. The next one is A Grandfather's Love.
Right.
So it's going to be like families. So that will probably be out July-ish. So that's what I'm working on. As far as where you can find my work, you can find A Mother's Love on godless.com. It's a Godless exclusive. Finding Heaven is on Amazon, Kindle Unlimited. And then Compulsions, my dark erotic poetry, is releasing on Tuesday on Amazon in ebook and paperback.
That's Tuesday the 10th, yeah?
Yep.
Excellent. Donna, thank you so much for your time. I know my students are going to get an awful lot out of that. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure talking with you. I'm so happy to connect with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.